I've been talking about this for a while, and my wife and I have been talking about this, and how many celebrities are getting caught, goofing around with their nannies and wrecking their marriages. And we've got the Windy City nanny on the line here, Florence Ann Romano. How you doing, Florence?
Hello. How are you?
We're good.
So
I'm so thrilled to be here with you all.
You wrote a book called Nanny and Me, right?
I did,
Okay.
yes. It helps children understand the transition of being cared for by their parents to being cared for by a nanny or a caretaker or a babysitter. And it's all from my experience as a former nanny.
Your publicity, the material I got, I found something shockingly interesting. Nearly 60% of American households now retain a nanny of some sort for their kids.
Can you believe it? And that statistic rises in line with the employment rate. So we're looking at something that is not trendy. This is a behavior of society, and it's something that I really feel strongly about starting a national conversation about.
And you were a nanny.
I was a nanny. I started at 11 years old, if you can believe it or not. I think back on that, and I'm like, goodness, who were those parents leaving me with their children at 11 years old? But I really started as a mother's helper and into adulthood. And it was the best time of my life. Learned so much about the world through kids.
Okay, so what's the basic lesson here that America should learn from what the celebrities are going through? Never hire a hot nanny?
That seems like the logical choice, right? That you just shouldn't be hiring attractive people. But the truth is, when you're looking at regular families across America and beyond, you're not finding this scandal as often as you're hearing about it with the celebrities. And you think about it, okay, they're celebrities, and anything that's attached kind of to that scandalosity factor is always appealing for the media. And really, when it comes down to it, you're not finding that there's so much infidelity going on in these regular families. So the best way to really fight against that or push against that stereotype is to get into that interview process with your prospective nannies and really find out what they're like, who they are, their principles, their passions, their backgrounds. It's the only place you can really have a conversation like that. Corporate America, you can't be asking questions like that. So you can do that with a prospective nanny. And if you do that, the margin of distrust is lowered greatly because you're all on the same page.
Yeah, but what about homely nannies that should be hired? But the celebrity people, they want good-looking nannies, and then look what happens. Look at Ben Affleck.
It really comes down to trust, truthfully, because you could have a homely-looking nanny or an attractive nanny, and let's be honest, a lot of the time this infidelity doesn't have anything to do with the attractiveness factor. It usually is just, it's different, it's a little naughty, it's whatever you want to call it, and that's what's tempting about it. So regardless of the attractiveness factor, I'm really not a believer that is going to be what makes the big difference in perhaps an infidelity happening in the family.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like anybody has any integrity anymore. I mean, look at Gwen Stefani. Supposedly now, I don't know, this is what I've read. My opinion. I'm not an expert and I didn't interview her. But, her husband cheated with 2 nannies.
He could have cheated with 5 nannies or 10 nannies, and that's what makes me so angry because, here I was, and I took my job as a nanny very seriously. My first priority was the children. It was the children and being a good role model for those children. So your idea of integrity, that is spot on. What is happening with society today and pegging these nannies as, just kind of these lust toys is really doing everyone a disservice because it's really discounting what these wonderful moral nannies are doing across the country to take care of these children and these families. So it's not. It really is a problem to think that this is how it always is in every single family with an attractive nanny.
Let me ask you something. Now, just for instance, in England, high society or whatever, most people had nannies, correct?
Correct. They do a lot, and not even just England. You find it in New York. You find it everywhere.
But you never hear of, well, maybe it happens, but you don't really hear about things happening with those nannies or anything.
You don't hear about it as much because, again, it's the celebrity factor, at least in my opinion, where you get these nannies that are in the limelight in some way, shape, or form. They're traveling with these celebrities, and it becomes very easy because of the proximity to fame to get caught up in that. So sometimes you have to look at the red flags there. I mean, look at the Gwen Stefani incident and the nanny's name was Mindy. She started dressing like Gwen Stefani. I mean, if that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. I mean, there's obviously an ulterior motive there when something like that starts to happen.
Yeah, and I'm sure Gwen thought it was flattering and all. Gwen's a really nice person.
I think she's lovely. I feel terrible for her.
I know. I think it was so bad. And then look at Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Exactly.
He was with the nanny for what, 20 years?
You know
she
what?
was
I
not
believe
attractive.
In love for everyone. Yes, everyone have love and find love, but I don't believe in being a homewrecker. That's something I'm never going to believe in, and nor ever approve of. Especially, these nannies that are there to take care of the children and make a family harmonious and loving and safe. That these nannies who are having these infidelities are doing exactly the opposite of that. And that comes back to the moral compass and the principle of the job.
Well, Robin Williams, he left his wife for the nanny?
He did. He did. I mean, there are so many stories. I absolutely agree. There are so many stories you hear about celebrities doing this. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen in regular families, that it's not a possible threat. And you do hear of spouses, saying that, my husband was, found him, he was hitting on the nanny and things like that. And in my opinion, what you really need to do in a situation like that is if your nanny comes to you and says, listen, I'm uncomfortable, the husband or the wife, because it could be either or, is, doing things that are inappropriate, then you need to voice that to the spouse. And then the most important thing to do is to resign. You do not want to stay in a family like that, because as long as you do, you are participating in it. And that makes you guilty by association, because it takes two to tango, no matter how small the indiscretion. So you really want to get out of there as soon as possible, and then make sure that the children understand that it wasn't anything they did wrong. We always have to circle back and make sure we're taking care of those kids. That's the first priority.
Is there an indication that by and large, the aggressor is the husband? It's not the nanny, but it's the husband?
It depends. I think it depends on the family. It depends on the nanny. Depends on the husband. Depends on the wife. And regardless of who the aggressor is, if you participate in it, like I said, you're guilty. So if you got to put an end to it right in the beginning, if it's not something that is appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I used to babysit and have babysitters working under me and taking care of kids, and then I was a baby wrangler. And I don't know, I feel kind of funny saying this, but not one husband hit on me. So what does that mean?
We're soul sisters.
And I'm
not
cute.
One hit on me either. So there you go.
I'm really, really cute.
You don't sound crazy as much as you sound desperate, Madison.
Not good. That's so funny. No, I mean, it never happened to me, and I'm very thankful that I worked for wonderful, wonderful, wholesome families. And you do hear about it, though. I mean, I just read an article the other day, and that a nanny, an anonymous nanny, came out and said that this was her experience with the husband, making advances on her, and so you do hear about it, but it's not. It's not the rule. It's definitely not the rule.
Okay, so is it true then that the wife needs to be very attentive to this? In other words, should the wife be constantly looking for the red flags?
I think both parents need to be involved in the interview process to try and make sure that something like this doesn't occur. Because if you're both on the same page, you and your spouse are both interviewing these nannies, I would hope that in your marriage or in your relationship that there is a level of trust and communication there. So if you're interviewing and this wonderful nanny walks in and she happens to be attractive and your spouse turns to you and says, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this. Whatever the reason is, they're not comfortable with it. Hear what they're saying, say thank you so much for being honest, and then move on to the next nanny. Because, that's really what is going to help the situation. That's what's really going to help you come to a very peaceful conclusion about having that person in your home.
Oh, boy, I don't know. There are naughty nannies, though, I'll tell you that much.
Well, especially where celebrities are concerned.
Yeah, because they want to make money.
Yeah,
They sell the story.
Yeah.
But they probably have to sign an NDA, blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
You know, I agree with you. I think a lot of the time, and this is why it's so important to me to really start that national conversation about childcare, to push against that stereotype. It's not just a job about easy money. It's not just, you know, you just walk in a family, feed the baby, change the diaper, put it to bed. That's not what we're talking about here. I really want nannies to feel that they're a part of the home and that they're invested in the development of the children.
Right.
And that really comes down to also the nanny themselves working inside out, making sure that they're principled and moral, and they're an extension of the parent's eyes, ears, and heart. That's always what I say. So I'm not saying that the nanny needs to implement their religion or their spirituality or their discipline necessarily, but they do need to be an extension of what the family's values are. So when you're in that interview process, you're going to want to make sure that everyone understands each other and that they're all on the same page with discipline and bedtime routines and all of those things so that it seems seamless. Because again, circling back, the children want to be able to feel secure and feel loved and it be playful and magical and wonderful. And the only way to do that is if you're making sure that the nanny is front and center in this child's life and there to really cultivate and nurture them fully.
You know, I hear what you're saying about the interview process and how both parties need to be involved, the husband and the wife, and the diligence they need to apply during this initial interview and getting a feel for, is this going to be the right fit for the nanny and the family. But that doesn't say anything about the fact that relationships evolve. And even though it might be a brilliant selection to begin with, a year later it might not be. So what and I'm thinking the wives are the victims here most always. So what red flags are they going to be looking for? What should they be looking for that might be going on?
There need to be hard and fast rules about what the nanny's job is in that family. You look at these infidelities that are happening. It sounds like a lot of the time these fathers are just hanging around the house. Well, I want to know why you have a nanny if the father's just hanging around the house all the time. Why do you know, so I think you need to make sure that the ground rules are this is a person that's in the home with the children because there's an absence of the parent. Now, not to say that a parent can't be in the home when the nanny is there. I think that's perfectly fine and acceptable. But for the spouse looking on, you want to talk to your children because I'll tell you what, those are the best little spies in the whole wide world. They know what is going on. You just talk to those kids and they are uncensored and they will tell you everything. So really make sure your relationship with your children is open where they feel comfortable talking to you about things that don't make them feel good or are unsafe or are uncomfortable. And then as you develop this relationship with your nanny, make sure that you're continuing to get to know them and, you know, their values and their background and what they're doing in their lives so you feel like this is a person that you trust. It's all about developing the trust. So if you start to see things that don't feel right and you start to see behaviors that are not consistent perhaps with the behaviors of the nanny when she was first hired or he was first hired, then you need to start looking more closely into that. And even before you bring her on, you bring him on, you want to check those references. You want to spend time with them. You don't just want to have one interview and then hire them. You want to have an interview where you sit down and talk with your spouse and get to know her, get to know him, bring them into the house for a second interview, let them interact with the children, ask your kids what they think. Have a tiered interview process and let it go on for as long as you feel you need to because it's about trust and it's about peace of mind. You don't want to hire this nanny and then, okay, now I'm leaving my precious cargo with them and I'm still a little worried, still a little not sure. Then that nanny is not serving the purpose. The purpose is to help you be able to live the life that you want to live, knowing that your children are cared for and loved and safe.
Yeah, I agree with that. And here's another thing. Don't you think like nannies should be uniformed?
I think any family that requires a uniform is completely in their right to do it. Just like any job, you may have a uniform code.
That's right.
I mean, you're working with children here. So if your family, your prospective family says to you, we require a uniform, and you don't agree with it, then that's not the family for you. But they are within every right to ask you to do so.
So then the wife's choice for the uniform, the nanny's uniform, should be coveralls.
Coveralls.
No. It should be long, you know, they shouldn't show cleavage.
Coveralls. I'm telling you, it should be coveralls with a sweatshirt.
No, you want them to look nice, black and white.
No, you don't want them to look nice.
No, well, nice, just nice, not beautiful.
You make a good point there. Maybe you want to make sure they're dressed, like you mentioned before, dressing really homely.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be whatever you need it to be. But again, I think the best way to measure it, truthfully, for a parent that's wondering, what should I do? How should I implement this? Think about how you want your children to interact with this nanny. What type of role model? I keep going back to that, but it's so true. What type of role model do you want this nanny to be in your child's life? And that comes down to the clothes he or she wears. And it has to be consistent with your values as a family.
Yeah. When I was living in New York, and I was a baby wrangler, and, you know, I really was like a nanny for the 3 little boys because they were all models. And I would walk down the street with them, you know, and we'd be so happy. And I would see, you know, in New York, you see all these other nannies pushing the buggies and stuff. I mean, they looked so miserable. You know, like, it was the worst job. Like, you know, make the best of it, you know. I had my kids laughing. I would tell them jokes. I mean, that's how I got it.
You sound like you were the best baby wrangler. I got to tell you.
I was.
I don't know how they wouldn't have been entertained by you. I would have loved it.
I was a baby wrangler for 7 years, you know, making them stand on a X on the floor and teaching them jokes. First, I taught them jokes so they would learn how to talk, you know, because I had them in 6 months.
You're hitting the nail on the head. I really believe in that, too. You want to make these children happy. You want to make the world magical for them. You want it to be a beautiful experience in their life when they look back and they think, oh, my goodness, that was the best. She loved me so much. He loved me so much. We did so many fun things. She taught me so many things. I really believe education, being laced through all the fun, is super important. A nanny is not just there, like I said, feed the baby, change the diaper, or, you know, drop them off here, drop them off there. I would really like to see nannies be another educator, another arm of that. Not that they have to be a teacher or anything like that, but constantly be challenging the kids to be, you know, learning their numbers and their ABCs and the colors. You know, there's always opportunities to make sure the children are engaged and stimulated. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I believe in that completely.
Well, I would teach them because they liked Pokemon, okay? I didn't know anything about Pokemon. But there was one Pokemon named Poe. I said, there is no Poe. It's Edgar Allan Poe. So I would say he's a famous writer. I would teach him all that. And then when their mother would come home, I'd say, who's Poe? Edgar Allan Poe. Like, she'd be shocked, you know?
That's a beautiful thing. Look at that. I think that is the best illustration of showing, you know, intelligence and just being a person that challenges the kids to start understanding the world. I think that's beautiful.
I would take them everywhere.
I so agree.
Yeah, you know what I would do? Before we would go in the house, after I picked them up from school, I would take them to this park, and I would take stones and I would throw them really far and make them run, okay? And 'cause, you know, you got to get that energy out before they go, you know, in the house and they're all ramming.
Exactly.
So I would throw the rocks, and I mean, if, you know, I threw them pretty far. And the kids were like, oh, far. And I'd say, all right, come back. Oh, all I could think, what if I lose one, you know?
Rock?
No, the kid.
I love that. The things that go through your head, right? I mean, that's so true. I did similar things with the kids too. I mean, even when they were in high chairs, you know, I'd put the Oreos, pardon me, not Oreos. What kind of nanny's putting Oreos on a baby's high chair? The Cheerios, and we would count the Cheerios as they're eating them, and you know, you always find a way to make it educational and fun. And Mary Poppins has a great quote that says that every task that needs to be done, there's an element of fun. And I've always believed in that. I believe that every nanny should really try to hone in on that mantra, because it only helps the children. And like you said, that mother was so impressed with that, that kernel of wisdom that you gave their child. And that's really what it's about. It's really about helping cultivate those kids.
Sometimes before the mother would come home, I'd put all three of them on the couch with me, and I'd put them in a lotus pose, and we'd all be going, She would crack up when the mother came home. She would just crack up because I really had a lot of fun with these kids.
It sounds like it. I have to tell you, I think you may need to go back to doing some baby wrangling, because
I would only do. Listen,
I'm made for it.
I'm only going to do celebrities.
Celebrities.
And hopefully, I get thrown a bone.
So funny. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I think this is a great story. I mean, I know you must have some really bad stories too.
I never think of it as bad. I think of it as a learning experience or a challenge, and there always are going to be those moments. A quick story about it is one little girl that I cared for a long time. Her parents were very, very hard on her, expected a lot from her in school, and she would get so nervous about it that she would, try to throw up. I mean, she was just so nervous, and there was so much competition. And this was a very delicate subject to broach with the parents, because you are not their parents. You see what's happening at home. So sometimes you have a secret view into the child's life, and maybe the parents don't. So it's a delicate line you cross and you walk. And so I sat down with her parents one night, and I said, this is what I'm seeing, and I would really love to find a way to help her and to take the stress off of her, because she's so super smart, and I just want her to be able to succeed and excel, and she can if she can just get out of her own way right now in her mind and the things that are challenging her and making her nervous. I never want to ever say to the parents, this is what you're doing wrong, and I can't believe you're treating your kids like this. I mean, that is never the way to really approach any situation if you want to have a result. And so I'm very happy to say that we came to a conclusion where they understood what I was saying. They understood that she was very nervous and that they needed to maybe give her a little extra attention, a little extra help. And she continued to feel comfortable coming to me and talking to me about what was making her nervous, because I kept her trust, and her parents kept my trust when I went to talk to them about it. So there are challenging moments, and my heart hurt having to go and have that conversation, because I loved her so much. I hated seeing her upset, but I needed to help. Yeah. So that's where a nanny and the parents can walk a fine line, but you have to remember to always be respectful, but also bring it to their attention.
Hey, are you still doing this work?
I am no longer a nanny. I am retired. And I just loved children so much that somehow I wanted to stay connected to them. And the best way to do that was to write Nanny and Me and to help children through what I saw firsthand, sometimes to be a difficult transition, and help parents as well, and help them get peace of mind during this transition and finding someone to care for their children.
Yeah. I'll tell you something. I think I really loved it, because I didn't have children, and so to me, I would use them like little toys.
Oh my goodness!
I would wind them up, or maybe sometimes I would hide them and act like I don't know where the kids are when the mother came home, or I'd put the baby into a laundry basket.
You were a lot of fun. I kind of wish I had met you before. You could have given me some fun pointers for those kids.
Oh, yeah. Kids loved it, they loved me.
They do.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. I mean, think of now those kids, when they probably look back, they probably think, oh my gosh, she was so much fun. And they might even do some things that you did with them with their own children. I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Florence, we're running out of time, and I want to thank you so much. The Windy City Nanny. Nanny, were you in Chicago?
You know what? I am from Chicago, and I happen to be traveling this weekend, so I am in Florida at the moment for a wedding this weekend. So I took the wind with me, though, from Chicago. It's here because it's raining and windy, so I guess it follows me wherever I go.
And the name of the book is called Nanny and Me, and I guess they can find it on Amazon everywhere.
You sure can. Barnes & Noble, Amazon Books A Million. You could just throw it into Google, type Nanny and Me, and it will pop right up there for you. And I love to hear from my readers and any of the listeners. And I have a Facebook page that they can visit, Florence Ann Romano Author, and I love to stay in touch with everybody.
Oh, it's so terrific. This was so much fun and something I could really relate to.
Well, you sure can. I mean, this was so much fun for me to hear someone who really understood it and was in the trenches and left a beautiful imprint on those kids. And I have to tell you, this wedding that I'm at this weekend, I'm actually with a couple kids that I used to nanny for, and it's the most unbelievable thing to see them as adults.
That's so great.
So it's very cool.
Thanks, Florence. Got to let you go.
Yeah.
Flat out.